that a little bit later about TikTok. I want to get started. So let me stop sharing for a second and address everybody. Welcome to Orientation Week. Thank you for joining. Most of you have joined. I want to introduce my co-lecturer or co-instructor, which is Matteo. Matteo, you there? Yeah, your video is not on. So, is it?
No, is it? It's just that you don't see me. I hide from you, but yeah, I'm here.
Okay, cool. All right, so Matteo is going to help me out. Matteo is the founder of RevoU, and I am his co-founder, and both of us are running this for the second time, for the second semester. This is orientation week, so we haven't started learning digital marketing in detail, so the course hasn't started. As you know, the course will start on the 16th of March. Tonight and for the rest of the week, we are going to be talking about digital marketing, but it's to orient you to what we're trying to do. So let me just quickly share the introduction to orientation. So these are the goals. The main goal is for you to gain a solid foundation of marketing.
Razi, sorry to jump in. Can you share the screen actually?
Oh yeah, sure, sorry. My bad. Okay, so here are the slides. Welcome to Orientation Week. Before we start, I just want to share with you the objectives of this week. Not tonight, but this week. It's a whole week. First of all, I want you to be aware that we want you to gain a solid foundation of marketing in digital. So we're going to be talking about marketing, but we're going to be more specific in what is marketing in the digital era. So the second one is to know how to select the right set of channels. Okay, so with marketing, there's always communication channels, and we want to help you kind of set the right objectives and goals when you're doing a campaign and teach you the factors to choose the right channels. The third is to learn how to build and grow a marketing team. What this means is not only recruiting, not only setting up, but also the skills that you need if you are going to be part of a marketing team, which is the fourth one, the skills and roles required. Okay, before we start, I wanted to share you a few ground rules for tonight, okay? And the first one is that we want this session to be interactive, okay? And for most of you, we did a survey on Slack. Most of you have not used Slack before, and some of you have not used Zoom before as a tool. We wanted to share with you why we're using these tools. Right? By the way, if you can't hear, make sure you connect your audio, okay? Okay, so why are we using Zoom? Why are we using Slack? And why are we using Gitbook? The reason why we're doing it is because many tech companies use these tools. Many startups, many tech companies, and many companies who have transformed to be more digital, they start using these tools for communication. You know, most of them facilitate remote working, flexible working hours, but also these tools help to track your conversations, track your projects, etc. So the reason why we're using it is because it's very useful. We are learning online and we are communicating online, but also for many of you that are founders, that are you know, managers, and for some of you who are job seekers. It's very important to start using some of these tools, specifically Zoom and Slack, because either it's good for you to start implementing them in your office and in your business, but also for some of you job seekers, these are the tools you need to get used to if you decide to join companies who are tech savvy, who are very digitally minded, and most of them like startups, unicorns, and many companies that have to have a business unit that are very connected. They are using these tools. Now, with regards to this lecture tonight, I want you guys to jump in and ask questions if you feel the need to. Like when we're discussing a specific topic, please, just unmute and ask your questions. But please do so responsibly and make sure that after you ask your questions, you mute again, so that your background noise doesn't disturb the class. Okay.
Maybe, Aziz, just to add on that, feel free to, if you want to ask the question also in Bahasa, or to either here on Zoom or write it on Slack. Also, feel free.
Yes.
Yeah.
We have a few participants who don't speak English, but most of you do speak Indonesian. Sorry, we have some of you who don't speak Indonesian. Sorry, and we apologize in advance. But most of us speak Indonesian, and I can speak Indonesian. Matteo cannot speak Indonesian, but it's okay. He'll just have to pretend like he's understands. But if you need to, we prefer that you ask in English. But if you want to ask in Indonesian, feel free. Okay, so let's get back to it. Let's talk about tonight. I'll start with the intro to the digital marketing landscape. That's the first topic that we want to cover, part 1 of tonight. And the objectives of tonight are these 6 points. First is to understand the role of marketing in business. That's very important. I want everyone here to understand that our backgrounds are all different. And I want to apologize beforehand to those of you who have a lot of marketing experience. Some of these topics will be very, very simplified, very basic. But the reason for that is so that we start at a starting point where everyone kind of understands the same thing, so that when we talk about marketing, when we talk about digital, we're talking it starting from the same starting point. Okay, so the second part is to discern between offline and online marketing. Thirdly is to grasp the potential of digital marketing. So it's not just knowing the difference, but also understanding the potential of digital marketing to grow your business, and then number 2 is for yourself, like the potential of digital marketing for your career as a founder, as a C-level, as a hiring manager, or as like a member of a marketing team. Fourth is to identify the main goals of marketing online. So when you do decide to create a campaign online or to invest more in digital marketing, there are 2 main goals, and we're going to discuss that. The fifth is to know the pros and cons of paid versus free channels. Many of us know that with online marketing, there are free channels such as social media and the like, and also search engine optimization. Some of these are free channels. However, they're not completely free. There is investment. But we want to share with you, at least for you guys to understand the pros and cons of each. So there's definitely channels that you need to pay for. There are channels that are free, and you need to know the pros and cons so that you can choose wisely. And the last objective is to gain the ability to assess and prioritize the online channels for a campaign. This is the core of what we're going to talk about tonight. And the assignment that we're giving you tonight that you need to complete before tomorrow will be around this. And I'll stress multiple times the importance of knowing all of the factors. There's really 3 main ones, and we'll share it later on tonight. Okay, so first of all, I'd like to have a quick discussion just so that we're on the same page with regards to marketing. And again, I want to apologize. This is oversimplified. My job here is just to really, really make it simple so that we have some basic understanding. And when it comes to marketing, the super simple answer is there are 2 parts to marketing, okay? The first one, and this is kind of like the foundation of it, is product marketing. And when we talk about product marketing, in simple terms, we're trying to understand why people are willing to buy your product or service, why they would part with their hard-earned cash to use your service or to buy your product. And so the objective of product marketing is to achieve product market fit, right? For startups, and for those of you who are founders of startups, digital startups, you're probably very aware that this is the initial thing you have to do. When you bring a product to market, you need to make sure that there are customers that actually need your product and are willing to pay for it. So when we look at it more deeply, product marketing is responsible for kind of developing the positioning of your product or your business, the messaging, what should you say, what are the value propositions, how are you different from your competitors, like the competitive differentiation, how are you better than others, how do you price things, as well as it's the job of a product marketing person, right, to brief the marketing communication teams on how they should approach customers. Okay, so if a business knows why it exists, what problem are they solving, that's the job of the product marketing person. So if you look to the right of the screen, there's sample job roles, such as product marketing manager, chief product officer, product owner, product manager, designer, UI designer, etc. So this is a very important function. And so it's really important that to understand this is part of marketing. So marketing is not just about advertising, but marketing is about understanding why your product exists. The second part is about marketing communications, right? So marketing communications is the second part of it. Once you have a product that satisfies or solves a problem and has customers willing to pay you money, the second component to that is being able to communicate, find more customers, and having them continually buy from you. So the objective of marketing communications is to go out to the market and acquire new customers as well as retaining them. Essentially, the purpose of this is to increase profit. So what it means is you need to spend some money in marketing to gain a lot more back in revenue and make sure that the numbers are profitable. Okay, so in simple terms, building relationships with potential customers, right? And providing value by solving their problems, either directly by selling your product, or perhaps if you're engaging them in online media such as social media, is to kind of help them out so that they see you as someone that they want to buy from. So if you're going to research further about marketing communications, I suggest that you Google the AIDA model, right? You can Google that later. It's very important that you learn that, because and I'm not going to go through it now because it goes deeper than what we want to, but it's very important for you guys to check it out. So Google AIDA model later and then see what you find. Now the sample job roles, obviously you got marketing, PR, events, business development, and you have marketing analysts and direct marketers. Now if you look to the left, I just want to quickly show you. These are sort of like some of the things that a marketing communication person does. And the reason why I wanted to show you this is to kind of show you the difference between online and offline a little bit. So for instance, if you're going to do advertising, it's really about media buying. It's buying advertising, for instance. So there are channels for online and there's channels for offline. When we talk about direct marketing, we're talking about the same thing. There are online channels to do it. There's offline channels to do it. PR, same thing. Sales promotions. Like if you're coming up with promotions, some of it's going to be for online only. Some of it's going to be part of your retail strategy, for instance. And also when we talk about personal selling, online could be a lead generation tool. So that's a quick introduction. Now, within marketing communications, there's two types of channels, and this is where we're going to differentiate between offline and online channels. First, I'm going to talk about offline channels, and as you can see, it's the traditional marketing channels. Like I use some of the icons here. It's basically the old school marketing channels such as TV, radio, newspapers, magazines, billboards, brochures, face-to-face direct mail, and including, for instance, your product label. If you're selling something retail, your product label is an offline communication tool, what you communicate in that. So what are some of the features of offline communication channels? Okay, the first is it's mostly one-way communication. Like if you watch TV or you listen to a radio show or you're reading a newspaper, there is some feedback loop, but it's very minimum. Like for instance, if you're reading a newspaper, there's some, readers who write in and it gets published, right? So that's almost two-way communication, but it's slow and it's very minimum. You can't interact with a billboard, but in this day and age, sometimes you have a QR code, that you can scan, and then you can kind of connect to an online communication channel, for instance. But it is very minimum. Most of it is one-way communication. It's telling you something, buy this or whatever. And the second one is obviously difficult to get instant feedback. So if you run a advertising on TV, it's not very easy to get feedback on the performance, okay? So it's less targeted. So most of this offline communication or traditional channels are mass communication. you're sending the same message to a lot of people and hoping that it hits the right people. Okay, so it's usually typically used for mass products that have a wide variety of customers. If you're trying to target a specific group, sometimes it can be very, very difficult. There are certain things you can do. For instance, if you want to reach a middle upper class market, advertising on a cable network, like for instance, IndiHome or First Media, middle to lower class income people in Indonesia would not be watching those channels because they're paid. Usually people who have cable TV are middle upper class. So there is some targeting, but very minimum and very difficult. Another example is like a female radio, like there's a radio in Indonesia called female radio. So I'm assuming that the people that listen to that are females, not all, but if you're trying to sell to females, then maybe you can use that radio station because its primary target is females. Okay, but it's less targeted. It's more for mass communication. Very powerful mass communication tool, very weak targeting. The fourth is it's very expensive because it's a mass communication tool. It's very expensive, but it's less effort to execute. Keep that in mind when we move into the online channels. Offline channels are usually very expensive, but it takes less effort to execute them. You just create your creative, you send it, and then it gets aired, and there's little tracking, which is the last point, difficult to track performance and your return on investment. Okay, so that's offline communication channels.
Can I just jump in and add a couple of things?
Sure, go ahead.
So I think an additional features, which is also very very important for online, especially the biggest online advertising platform that we will anticipate today and look at tomorrow, is the fact they are so-called self-service, meaning that basically you can start advertising immediately without having without having to speak with any sales agent, without any intermediary. Whereas this is not something which in most cases is possible for offline marketing, right? So you cannot just buy some TV space out of the blue from your laptop without first having to discuss and negotiate, etc., etc. So that's also make the whole process writing with offline marketing much slower than for online marketing. That was the first thing. The second thing, actually, which is very typical, which is very specific of Indonesia, is in some regarding how expensive or cheap it can be. So in some sectors, right, where there is a huge competition online. And in the case of Indonesia, specifically in e-commerce, where you have big giants like Shopee, Bukalapak, Tokopedia, Lazada, all fighting for the same customers. So as a result of that, the competition and the cost of advertising online for them, it gets more and more expensive. In some cases, right, when there's so much competition, actually the offline channel could become like cheaper. So that's why over the past of the few years, you started seeing more and more offline advertising for the likes of Lazada, Shopee, Bukalapak, Tokopedia, etc., etc. So that typically applies when you reach a huge scale already, scale that those e-commerce companies have reached.
Okay, so thanks, Mateo. I guess we'll start moving to the next one, which is online marketing channels. And I just want to highlight that this is where we're going to focus on this week and also for the next few weeks. This is what we're going to be studying, which is the online communication channels. So we talked about offline before and some of its strengths and weaknesses. Now we're going to talk about the online communication channels and really kind of highlight some of its strengths and weaknesses. So first of all, the online communication channels, as you would expect, most of you are online savvy, I would take it. And most of you are using Facebook, Google, email, WhatsApp, YouTube, and many others, including the question before from Aditya, which is TikTok. So these are online communication channels. And what people do on online communication channels, just try to imagine you using your phone, right? what do you, and you using your laptop and you're connecting online, what are you doing when you are using the internet? The first thing is that you're having conversations with each other. Okay, so that's one thing. You're using WhatsApp to communicate in a group and with your family, with your friends, to tell people you're coming, you're late. You're using it to communicate with others online. That's one. The second one is you're interacting with content. Okay, you're searching for content, you're consuming content, you're creating content, you're publishing content. And so it's all about content. So that's where content marketing comes from, because the main thing, or the other half of what people do online, or I would say actually 80%, is about content. And in effect, when you talk about content, who creates content? I mean, you can argue that with artificial intelligence in the future, content might be created by computers, right? But for now, at least, most of the ideas and most of the content creation is still human-based. So it's also about conversing. You can talk to someone over the phone, you can talk to someone over WhatsApp, you can also talk to someone by writing an article, you can talk to someone by creating a YouTube video. So it's really about connecting with people, and that's what online technology is about. So when we talk about online communication channels, we're talking about you connecting with your target audience, with your potential customers, using online communication channels. It's very simple, very straightforward. That's what it is. And that's what we're going to be studying, all aspects of it, from measuring performance to actually what are the main channels you can use to interact and possibly kind of market yourself to your customers. Okay, so basically businesses through their brands can engage with their potential customers online. So let's say you and I are friends and we communicate uh, over WhatsApp, right? Or over social media. Brands can kind of take on that human element to it. You know, brands have like a like sort of their profile or their persona, and they can act like humans because we kind of respond well to stories, we respond well to human kind of emotions. And so when you're trying to kind of build trust, when you're trying to get someone to actually like you, want to buy from you, brands can start acting like humans actually on social media. And that's what you're seeing this day and age. Now, the features of online communication channels are, number one, it's very direct and you get instant feedback, right? And so what that means is that if your product marketing or your product is not, or your service is not very good, then people might start talking about it online and really ruin your reputation. Okay? So the last point there's this social interactive dynamics that increases the importance of your reputation management, is because when your product is not that good, or maybe someone has a bad experience with your customer service, you know, a lot of the issues, for instance, some examples is like if you know, some telecommunications company, their signal is pretty bad or something, some errors happen, then people will start complaining on Twitter, on Facebook, and you have to deal with that because that does ruin your brand and it does ruin the trust that people have to continuously buy from you. So direct and instant feedback, it's both a good and bad thing, but it's definitely something that you're going to have to be adapting towards when you do start using online communication channels. My main point, though, one of the reasons why you should be online is because if you're selling a product, whether it's an offline product or not, there's a likelihood that people are going to start talking about you anyway online. And if you're not there part of the conversation, then there's nobody that could kind of explain things from your side. So imagine a bunch of people are having conversations in real life. If you are there, if you are present, then you can kind of communicate to them directly. And if you communicate to them directly, there is a chance that they'll be open to listening your side of the story. Okay, so it's very important that you participate. The second is, as opposed to offline communication channels, it can be very targeted and specific. Okay, so when we talk about the long tail, it's something that you should definitely Google. There's a few books about it. It's basically, you know, when we're talking about mass marketing, we're talking about products that everybody needs to use, typically commodities or stuff that a lot of people would buy. But there's also a lot of opportunities in the niche markets. You know, there's very few people that watch an obscure TV show from the 80s, for instance, and your ability to kind of create that will make you uh, kind of provide like for instance, I'll give you an example. I was born in the 80s and I love 80s TV shows, and when I go online I search for some old 80s TV shows. Now it's not readily available and not everybody knows about them, but the people that do know about it, the people that do enjoy it, they kind of band together as a community. And typically people who are in the long tail are very loyal, and when you service them, it could be very high value, right? Because they're engaged, because there's not a lot of them there's not a lot of people that are in the similar situation. So there's like human connectedness for people who are minorities, right? The third part is low barrier to entry, but more effort to execute well. So it's really very easy, very quick, very cheap for you to start interacting with people on social media, for instance. Very quick for you to create your first Google ad, or very quick for you to create your first Facebook or Instagram ad, or it's very quick for you to contact a publisher such as Ditik.com or Compass.com to create an ad and get it out there. But to execute well, because there's a lot of feedback, because there's a lot of interaction, because of the social dynamics, it's very, very difficult, or I wouldn't say difficult, but there's a lot of effort for you to execute well. You have to be interactive, and communication happens 24/7. So it's a lot more difficult to execute as compared to you just buying media, buying TV ads, and buying radio ads. Okay, so the fourth one is it's very granular performance measurement. So with TV, it's really just like, what are the ratings of that TV show? And when I put an ad, you know, it kind of gives me like, am I reaching a lot of people or not? But when we talk about online performance, you can be very granular. You can be like, you can track how many people actually opened your link, how many people, you know, opened a website, what percentage of people left as soon as they opened it, how long did they open it for? When you publish a video on YouTube, what is the average number of minutes that people watch it? You know, and how many people watch it, and how many people clicked as a result of watching it to open your website, for instance. So, and it's very, very detailed in terms of analytics. So it's a breeding ground, or there's a lot of opportunities for people who are very analytical to analyze all of this data and come up with strategies that are very targeted, that are very specific, and create very, very powerful campaigns. Just to round things out, social interactive dynamics, we discussed it before. When you talk about online, you talk about managing your reputation more so than in offline. Okay, so the next question is, why should you learn online marketing? And the first thing is, if you are a job seeker, there's a huge skills gap, right? There's a huge opportunity for you to come in, and as we look at Indonesia as well, the number of internet users increasing rapidly, accelerating every year. I believe this year it's over 50%. So internet penetration rate has hit over 50% of Indonesians. I think it's about 53%, over 100 million people. 120, 130 million people, if I'm not mistaken. And what that means is that more and more Indonesians are online, and more companies will start looking into online. So if you are a job seeker, it's one of the areas where there is a huge skills gap. There's just not enough online marketers, not enough people that understand how to effectively use online channels to reach potential customers. Okay, so in terms of personal objectives for all of the different types of stakeholders that are joining us here in orientation, first of all, you can launch a career in online marketing for sure. You can grow your business online if you're a founder or you have an offline business, just as the question in Slack. You can grow your business online for sure. You can reach a lot more people that you wouldn't normally be able to reach, especially for businesses that don't have a big budget. You could definitely reach a lot more people than you would normally reach. The third part is becoming a growth-minded digital startup. You know, if you're a founder, and as a founder, you know, typically you want at least one of them to not only understand the market as a product founder, but also have the skills to be able to grow through online channels, because it's the quickest way to grow, especially if your products are digitally based. And finally, for a lot of managers, for a lot of C-level people, and for a lot of training people, for a lot of HR people, recruiters, it's the ability also to hire and develop the right online marketing team. It's being able to spot who will be good in online marketing, not necessarily, oh, this guy already knows everything about online marketing, but it's also being able to spot the right skills, the right soft skills that would make a good marketer. And when we talk about online marketing, there's a lot of different areas. There's the creative side, and then there's more analytical side. And so it's like mix and matching, finding the right set of skills, and then helping them grow. So when you learn online marketing yourself, you'll be able to start building your team.
Razi, can I jump in and actually can you stop sharing that I take over the screen sharing? I want to add a few things. Good, cool, thanks so much. So there you go. Oops. Yeah, so on the job openings, right? So I wanted to share with you a few examples, and obviously the fact that what we are doing at Revu right now, what we started focusing on, and specifically the digital marketing field, is precisely because of what Razi mentioned, that there's a huge gap between what the companies are looking for in terms of skills and what the market can offer. So I just wanted to share with you a few examples with a couple of very big brands that you should all know, to show you how many jobs they currently have open when it comes to marketing. So this is e-commerce giant Shopee. As you can see, I just went to their career page. So marketing is basically the biggest, together with business development, the biggest department in terms of opening more than 100 jobs. If you look at Jakarta specifically, they have what is that? They have like almost 30 openings just in Jakarta for marketing. So that's one example that I wanted to share with you. Second example, so Traveloka. If you look at careers and you look in the case of Traveloka, what they call marketing, their department is called marketing analytics. And you search for it, and here again, look at and just in Indonesia alone, you have tens and tens and tens of basically of openings, right? So that shows you what we're talking about in terms of the sheer volume of demand that there is for those roles, and those are basically two e-commerce and tech giants, but this applies also to the long tail of companies, meaning also companies that don't have a team of hundreds of people, but they simply need one or two great digital marketers to either transition to digital or to just basically move forward. So those are two examples that I wanted to share. Another thing that I wanted to further highlight of what Razi mentioned, which is the case of founders or business owners for whom basically learning about digital marketing is something that is absolutely key in order to further push forward their business. We have had, and we have in our programs actually founders that take our 12 weeks course, basically to further be able to find different ways to grow their business, but also how to hire and manage their own online marketing team. So one example that I have here, this is one of our alumni that is also a tech founder. So actually, if someone from the team can share that URL, that link in the Zoom chat, so it's pretty pretty in depth and can show you basically the value of studying digital marketing from a founder or business owner perspective. So to just add on what basically Razi was mentioning. That's it, Razi. I stopped sharing, so if you can retake over.
Sure.
And I think we are doing a short break for questions, right?
Yeah, that's right. So let me just put this on. So We'll take a quick break if you need to go to the bathroom or take a quick break because, you know, you just need a rest. We'll kind of start answering some questions before we move on to the next part, which is probably the most important and difficult part. So let me just let me just share my Slack.
And in the meantime, just wanted to share with everyone, they shut down the aircon here. It's getting hotter and hotter.
It's getting hot. Yeah. Hopefully the questions aren't super difficult. It'll just get hotter. Anyway, so as you can see here, okay, I'm gonna answer Aditya's question. Okay. What's your opinion about TikTok as a digital channel for getting customers to your business? Okay, so this is the key right here. When we talk about TikTok, when we talk about, you know, all these new social media channels, it's just another social media channel. It's just another online communication tool. So if we were kind of doing this course early last year, this question would not exist. But the concept or how I'm going to answer it already is the same. You know what I mean? Like this would probably 10 years ago is a similar question would be, how would I use Instagram to get customers? TikTok is just a new way that people are interacting online. It's weird. And to be honest with you, I don't know enough about TikTok. I don't use it, and I will soon because I know that it's blowing up. But it's what we're trying to teach at RevOU is the strategic approach. So the strategic approach to TikTok first is to understand who is using it, how many people are using it, and this is something we'll be discussing after the break. And also, if you're going to use it to acquire customers, what's the effort needed to do so? And when we talk about effort, when we approach a new social media channel, in this case, TikTok, what you need to do is you need to create an account yourself. You need to join in on what everyone's doing. And you need to have a very, very clear understanding of why people are using it, why they're engaging with each other, how they're engaging with each other, and how can you as a business add value to those interactions. That's something that if you ask me specifically, okay, if I was consulting for a business and then they would ask me, hey, you know, like tell us how should we be on TikTok or how should we approach TikTok? I would go back to them and say, okay, give me a few days or weeks to get back to you with a strategy. And the way that I create that strategy is to first use TikTok myself and try to understand and answer the 4 W's and 1 H is like, why are they using it? Who's using it? And, you know, what are they using it for? And what's it all about? And once I kind of be part of the community and I can, you know, find a way where a business could come in and be part of that community and contribute, providing content that people in that community would enjoy, only then would I approach TikTok and then start measuring whether or not it's worth it. Okay, so hopefully that answers your question. Shifa, please answer later from a company perspective that are about to pick certain digital marketing agency to boost their sales. What needs to be assessed or noted carefully about the agency's skills? For me, number one is how are they going to show you the results? How are they going to measure success? Okay, and when we talk about measuring success as a business, what's success? It's increasing revenue, decreasing costs. In other words, profitability. So how is the agency, or what's the agency's plan to use online marketing to increase your sales or to save you money, right? And if they have a really good plan that's very logical, that's phased out over the short, medium, and long term, that's when you can go, okay, great, let's try this out. They're going to promise you, but then the promise should be about how they're going to contribute to the bottom line. Okay, so hopefully that answers your question. That's the number one key. Next, hi, I want to ask what's best marketing strategy for promoting, gaining interest about music and entertainment industry. We currently run a music label and singer management. What kind of tools? Well, I mean, how are people listening to music? And if you ask me now what I know, I'm not big on the music scene. But I think most people are shifting from radio. I don't know how long radio has to survive. I mean, it still exists, but a lot of the listeners are shifting, for instance, to Spotify and Spotify comparables. So if you're in the entertainment industry, there's also SoundCloud, and then there's a lot more independent artists who are reaching out to their niche audiences. And this is also maybe something that TikTok can help. TikTok is about video, is about music. I don't know what kind of music, I'm not aware of it, but you need to reach out to where people who are enjoying music and people are listening to music, where are they hanging out? Are they on Spotify? Are they on social media? Even YouTube has opened a music kind of streaming channel service. So that's something that you can look at. And what you want to do is when you're making music, you're creating content, right? And when you have content, the key is how do you optimize that content for all of the different channels on social media? Okay, so you need to know the strengths and weaknesses of each social media. What are the limitations in terms of length of content? And try to understand who are the audience or what type of people are enjoying your type of music, you know? Like if you're selling classical music, maybe selling it to millennials. I don't know how many millennials enjoy classical music, for instance. But if you're, selling music to teens, then you don't want to focus on a social media channel that's being used by boomers. So it's very logical. I would look at where people are hanging out and listening to music, specifically for your audience, and trying to kind of interact with them there. And that's something that we're going to discuss over the next few weeks, is how do you approach that more strategically. Okay. I work at a firm company. I don't know what that is. Like a firm, like a lawyer or some sort of firm. We already have database and using email marketing to sell our service. We want to scale up our target audience using Instagram. My question is, why do you think Instagram is an appropriate?
Razi, I would skip that question. I would answer basically the questions that are basically that are covering specific the material. So this is a bit specific.
Sure.
This is something that I wouldn't touch.
Well, I mean, it connects back to like the strategy what we were talking about on how you should approach it. But I'll skip that question. The next one is about above the line and below the line. We'll answer that a bit later. Which online marketing channels do you think are best for B2B companies to focus on? Starts with email, but then we can talk about the others later. Advertising, are you a Shopee type that is quite pricey, especially if you're a well-known brand? Yep. Do market researchers need to learn digital marketing? And is there roles? Yes. Simple answer, yes. Long answer, we're going to answer it over the next few days and possibly weeks. The online communication thing, which is the best place to advertising now? We're going to answer that, Lawrence. We're going to answer that at the second half of this lecture, so don't worry. Is creating content the majority, and how do we test the content before the content is good or not? You don't know if it's good or not until you publish it, right? You just got to publish it to a huge audience, test it, and if it works well, people will share it. Is a digital marketer required to bring in leads or conversions? Yes. I don't get the question though. How can we sell these products from offline sales to online? I think you can grab leads from online, and then you can bring them offline, right? You could kind of have them as a database, and then you can call them up and set a meeting. Let's meet face to face or whatever, if you're, like a service. TikTok, most people stress at workplace, and entertainment is releasing that stress. Yeah, I guess that's one thing. You're trying to tell me what TikTok's about. Okay, so great. I think TikTok stresses me out more than it relaxes me, by the way, but that's me. How to create sales funnel for the B2B e-commerce business. We'll talk about that later. That's very specific. I heard we can target by doing analyzing cookies. Cookies are just ways that a website can track visitors and could know if you're coming back. That's it. I recommend you Google what cookies are, and then we can talk about it deeper later on. Looking prospect in social media, LinkedIn. to B2B, that's a good idea. Yes, social media, especially if you're hiring or you're selling to professionals, LinkedIn is one way where organically, because people are not using it as much as Facebook and Instagram, your organic posts will reach more people on LinkedIn right now. I don't know how long that will last, but definitely trying it out, and maybe in the future looked at using LinkedIn ads. It's Kaskus or forum websites to look at channel for marketing your product. Depends. Who are using Kaskus? Um, is it the middle lower market? I don't know. But if you can find out who is using Kaskus, I'm pretty sure, even though it's not as big as it was 10 years ago, I'm pretty sure there's still a huge following, huge amount of people. But what are people using Kaskus for? You know, that's the question that you need to answer. And if it's relevant to what you're selling and the audience you're trying to reach, then you should definitely give it a shot. Okay, so next question is, what is the offline communication channels that's still effective to be used for branding or promotion in the future, or digital communication will totally disrupt completely the offline marketing tools? I think there's always a place for offline, right? But what that means, we don't know. I mean, if you look at billboards, they're becoming digital. Uh, but I think as we move forward and more people are connected to their phones, I mean, if you go to a mall today, right? I want to share with you something that I observe on a daily basis when I am at a restaurant, for instance, and I look around and let's say there's, you know, two people having a date. A lot of times they're going to be on their phone. You know, they're not looking at each other. They're not having a conversation. They're looking at their phones. You have a family having a dinner and they're all on their phones. It's a sad state of affairs, but that's the reality. And as more and more people get connected to their phones, more and more people's attention is going to be on their phone, on the internet, on the social media, on their WhatsApp. And so you're going to see a shift. For instance, a lot of people now get their news from WhatsApp groups. And that's also an issue because that's where a lot of the hoaxes start coming in, right? Who knows what's true and what's not? And if your source of news is from your WhatsApp group, it could be very scary sometimes. But on the flip side, you know, who's to say that the mass media is telling the truth? Who is to say they don't have an agenda? So, I mean, it really depends on what the trends are, but know that more and more people are starting to pay attention to their online communication channels, to their mobile phones, to their laptops. And so marketing is about gaining attention. And therefore you have to ask yourself, where are people paying most attention to? And when you look around, a lot of it's on their mobile phone, especially in Indonesia. Okay, I would like to ask how digital marketing could be used in insight mining, and we are introducing a new brand, especially when people are not aware at all. Is there any specific term that further make the insight mining? I don't know how to answer that, but we'll address it a little bit later. If we have an online promotion, do we still need to do a traditional promotion? Again, depending on the product, depending on the audience, depending on how much budget you have, right? So that's a loaded question. I can't answer that unless you give me the specific details. I'm a B2B marketer. Is it enough to do online marketing without using paid channels? Because sometimes I uploaded the price on it and my boss wants to keep it private. I don't know what that second part's about, but yes, you could definitely stick to free channels, and that's what we're going to discuss later. When is it right to focus on free channels? When is it right to go on paid channels? Okay, a few more questions before we move on and end the break. Bagaimana cara membangun brand di awal untuk melakukan online marketing? Can we talk about it later, Hafiz? I think some of the lecture today and tomorrow is going to answer that question. How much do you think to spend a budget to promote some products on social media? That's something that I need more specific information. How much budget? But we're going to start discussing things later tonight and tomorrow and later this week to help you start answering those questions for yourself. You know, because it's a very, I don't know how to answer that because it's very specific. I have my own food business, Rendang di Suko. Nice job, Giska, of promoting your business. Now everybody here on this channel knows about Rendang di Suko. Okay, so everybody could Google that. Everybody can open it on Instagram.
Good one, Giska.
Yeah, good job. See, that's a That's an example of promoting yourself on a digital channel, which is what we're doing right now. Okay, in 20 seeking for partnership to distribute my products. Until now, still have many people chat me what's up to join. Yes. Okay, so that's not a question. That was a promotion. Hashtag promo. There you go. Okay, so are we ready to move on? Okay. Let me just stop sharing here. Okay, so we're back on the slides. I hope if you had to go to the toilet, you went to the toilet, and now you're ready for the second half. Yes, yes, she is one step ahead of us all. Okay. Okay, so this is part 2. And I want you guys to sort of pay attention to the second part, yeah? Because your assignment is going to be based on this. And Matteo is going to help me out with some examples along the way, but let's start. So when we talk about marketing communication online, we need to reach our audience through online marketing channels, okay? And when we talk about online marketing channels, there are 2 types of goals that you want to reach, okay? Number 1 is acquiring a new customer, right? So you have a business, you have some products, rendang di suko, right, for instance, and you want to have more customers or you want to have more leads, right? You want more partners. You can try to acquire them online, right? The second one is once you acquire a customer, you want to retain them. You want to upsell, you want to cross-sell, you want to sell more to the people that have already bought. So for instance, as an e-commerce, let's say you're selling fashion, then you get them to buy the first product and then you keep emailing them. If they've installed your app, you want to kind of send a push notification and say, hey, there's a sale. Hey, so the other day you bought red boots. Why don't you buy a red dress to complement those boots, for instance? So that's retention. And so when we're talking about it, we're talking about on one end, acquisition, right? Acquiring new customers. And the second side of it is to retain them, to sell more. Okay, so let's look at the differences.
And these guys, please, I'm jumping in because I'm imploring you to, to get that concept, which might seem easy to grasp, really, 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 really to have it fully understood, because you would be surprised on how many self-proclaimed expert in digital marketing are still struggling to fully and clearly understand between the difference in terms of acquisition channels and retention channels. So this is really one of the most foundational concept that you should have very, very clear. And if you have questions not fully clear, if you want more examples, so Razi mentioned the e-commerce example. If you want additional example in terms of the difference between acquisition and retention for brands that you know, please ask on Slack, so we will provide additional examples.
Yes, thank you, Matteo. I'll reiterate again. So when you ask me which channels I should be using or how should I approach online marketing, where do I start? The first question you need to answer is, are you acquiring new customers or are you retaining existing customers or are you doing a bit of both? And when you build a short and long-term strategy, you need to incorporate both of these, because once you have customers, it's cheaper to sell more to them, right? I'll give you a really, really simple example from e-commerce. I'm pretty sure all of you have bought something online, right? You've bought something on Tokopedia, Bukalapak, you've bought something at Zalora, Lazada, all of these kind of e-commerce websites. Okay.
Can we ask Razi if anyone haven't bought anything online? Can you guys mention it in the Zoom chat if someone
yes.
hasn't?
So if you haven't bought anything online, you're a rare breed, but please share with us. We want to know how many of you actually haven't bought anything online. But let's assume for now that most of you have bought something online, okay? And when you've bought something online, I'm pretty sure you are aware that there are a lot of join our newsletter and get a 50,000 rupiah discount, right? Or get a 75,000 discount. You're like, wait, you know, how big is your margin where you can afford to give someone a 75,000 rupiah discount, right? So in most cases, you guys need to be aware that e-commerce companies are losing money with their first customer purchase. So when a customer buys something for the first time and uses a voucher, or anytime they use a voucher, most of the time they're cutting their margins or they're actually losing money. But why are they why are they okay with losing money with the first transaction? Because their data shows that after that they'll be able to make them buy more in the future, and that will cover the cost of uh, losing that first sale. All right, and I want to give an example because we have two people who work for Ancol, right? So Ancol is a amusement park in Jakarta, or a resort amusement park, and they sell tickets to the Disneyland of Indonesia. Okay, I'm pretty sure most of you are aware of Ancol. So they're selling tickets, and
So
basically,
Giska, you can feel bad about yourself. So you're not the only one that with brand
yeah,
and companies being mentioned.
yeah. So I want to share because Ancol sells annual passes. Okay, annual passes. So you buy one ticket to Dufan and you can go back to Dufan as much as you want. Okay, but if their data shows that even people who buy annual passes, they only go on average, let's say 2 times, then they know that they can sell an annual pass for 2 times the price of one ticket, for instance. You know, because they have the data, and this is the great thing about online marketing. You have data that shows the trends and what people do. And if people are using your products less, or it costs you less to sell them, then you can give them discounts. You can definitely calculate them. So hopefully that kind of gives you, yes, Dunia Fantasy. Shia Masadit, yeah, exactly. So you guys understand that when you acquire new customers, you don't always have to make a profit if your retention strategy is very good. If you could sell to them again and again and again, you can afford to actually pay more to acquire customers. A really good example is credit cards. Credit cards with all their deals and all that kind of stuff. And they could spend a lot because they know that they could make a lot of it back. Okay, so let's talk about acquiring new customers. What are some
Maybe
of the,
Razi, can I
yes,
just interrupt you?
sure.
One quite big exception, especially in the Indonesian market, is uh, as most of you, I'm sure, have heard, or there's so much investment capital in companies. So you do have many cases of pretty well-known brand and companies that basically pay more to acquire the customer than what they can earn, not just on the first sale, but for multiple years. And the reason is because they're subsidizing, acquiring customers from the capital and the financing that they are getting from investors. But that's an edge case, right? So let's forget about that. But this is what is happening in markets where there's a lot of venture capital investment, like in the case of Indonesia.
Just to recap that point, if something doesn't make sense, there's some sort of strategy between acquisition and retention that makes sense to the business, but not make sense to maybe the public. Okay, so when we talk about acquiring new customers, right? What we're talking about is first-time purchases, for instance. So you open an e-commerce, it's the first time you buy something. That means acquiring a customer. And capturing customer data. So if you have newsletter signups, like I remember Zalora, there was a newsletter signup. We gave you a 50,000 rupiah voucher if you join our newsletter. There's account creation. So on Facebook, you create an account, or on Instagram or on TikTok, you create an account. That is what's called acquisition. That's you're acquiring a new customer when that happens. And also app installs. Okay, so these are some of the activities that mean, at least on an online sense, you're acquiring a new customer. So what are some of the channels that we'll be studying over the next few weeks that are specifically about acquiring customers or can be used to acquire customers? One is content marketing. Two is search engine optimization. Third is paid search, or in other terms, SEM, search engine marketing. There's display advertising. There's retargeted ads. There's paid and organic social media. So when you have a social media presence, the purpose is for you to acquire customers at some point, right? And also website landing pages. Now, when we talk about retention, we're talking about cross-selling or upselling products and services in the future. And number two is to maintain awareness and engagement. So some businesses don't sell all the time, but they want to be top of mind for when the customer is ready to buy something. And that's when you want to maintain awareness and engagement with value add communications. So how can you kind of give people the information that they need and then they appreciate, so that they look at you as an expert, they trust you, and they remember you when the time is right for them to actually purchase what you're selling. Okay, so some of the channels is customer relationship management, or CRM. Within CRM, there's email direct marketing, right? When you send someone an email. There's push notifications on the app and even on the browser on Chrome. There's retargeted ads as well. Like you can use retargeted ads on social media to get existing customers. We'll talk about that later. So if you have a database, and I think there was a question before about, hey, I have an email database, but I want to promote my business on Instagram. You can actually use your database, upload it to Facebook, who owns Instagram as well, and then you can reach those customers on Instagram. And that gets freaky. I'm pretty sure some of you actually use social media and you're like, hey, you know, like this ad is following me. That's retargeted ads. Or like you visited a website or you bought something on a website and they know about you, and then they start advertising to you again and again and again and again. Okay, so that's when retargeted ads and some of these kind of email direct marketing, you can actually use your database and start targeting people on social media. They allow you to do that. And more interestingly, if you already have a huge database of emails, names, phone numbers, you can use Facebook. You can upload this database on Facebook, and you can target people who are similar to your existing database, right? And that's a really effective way to increase your conversion when you're acquiring new customers. Okay, and finally, on-site web and app management. So if you open a lot of e-commerce sites, for instance, what happens is sometimes when you open it again, they already know that you're a man, right? So you're in a fashion e-commerce, and then you open it for the first time. They ask you, do you want to browse the women's section or the men's section? But then when you leave, and then they obviously know that you're a guy for some reason, either based on what you were looking for or you've created an account. The next time that you're actually coming back, they already know you're a man, and then they take you directly to the men's landing page. Okay. Now, before I move on to the next slide, I want to share something, and this is for people who are maybe need a bit more perspective on online. I don't want people to feel like online is this strange place where I don't understand and it's all weird. Online and any technology takes its inspiration from offline. Okay, so anything that happens online is being recreated online, but more efficiently and more effectively. I want to give you a really, really simple example, and I'm going to use the fashion shopping center. Okay, so most of you buy clothes, and some of you buy online, and some of you buy offline. Okay, and I want to show you the way online works is that it replicates in an online way what happens offline. Okay, so in an offline environment in retail, you would enter the store and you would open the door, and then you would sorry, you would open the door and you'd enter, and then you start looking for products, right? And so you start picking them up and you sort of look at the products, and then basically you make a decision on whether you want to buy it or not. If you want to buy it, you take it to the kind of cashier and you pay for it. If you're not going to buy it, you put it back. Okay. With offline, there's nobody counting how many times a product is being picked up and what percentage of people actually bought each item. Whereas with online, when you open a product page and you look at it, we can actually know how long people are spending looking at a product. We know what percentage of people are actually, when they look at a product, what percentage of people are actually buying it. So you know which are fast moving items in much more granular details when it comes to online. And when you open a website such as Zalora, such as Lazada, such as, Bukalapak, it's like entering a shopping mall and you're looking at products. When you're opening a product page, you're looking at the product and you're making a decision. Do I want to buy it or not? Is it worth the money or not? Do I have enough information to make the purchase? So online is just reimagining offline, but using the advantages that we were talking about before, which is you can measure performance. You know all those details, okay? So I just wanted to give you that perspective. So it's not something to be afraid of. It's not something that's completely alien. Just look at what happens online and then look at the slides that we shared earlier about the differences of online communication, and you can sort of figure out why a website is designed the way it is, okay? So next, another way to, and we talked about this before, there was a bunch of questions earlier, between organic and paid, okay? So organic, yeah, Matteo, you want to say something?
I was moving, but then I can.
All right.
No, so no, actually, no. Let me say something. So this is the second fundamental, concepts that you have to understand. And again, let me tell you how many self-proclaimed marketing and digital marketing experts still don't get this right. So what is in this slide is absolutely fundamental for you to understand and to clearly separate what is one and what is the other.
Yes, exactly. So a lot of you asked before, can I not pay anything, or can I just, focus on organic? Yes, you can. And here we're going to sort of talk about what organic means is just basically using channels which don't require you to pay for each click. So what you're trying to do online is you're trying to get people to open your website or to open your app. That's it. The way that, your retail shop online is a web page or it's on social media. You're getting people, you're trying to drive traffic into those pages so that people could look at your products and eventually buy them if they want it, right? So organic means using channels which you don't have to pay, such as social media on Facebook. You can post something for free, and then if your content is interesting enough, then people will start visiting your website, right? So you have content marketing, you have PR. PR is basically social media online, by the way. And PR also means interacting with online media. So if you can get an article published on detik.com, great. Or if you're a tech company and you get your business published on a tech blog, great. And the more reputable and the more traffic these media sites are, the higher you will rank on search engines, which is search engine optimization. Search engine optimization is about making sure that you reach the top of Google for keywords that are relevant to your business. So you have search engine optimization, you have social media posts, you have email marketing as well. Like if some of you come across a database of people, I want to give you an example. So at satipa.com, we try to help singles find love, right? So one time someone from, we worked together with a bank that wanted to provide value to their customer base who are single. And so we offered a deal. We sent an email at the bank's permission to send an email to all the single credit card holders and offer them a service, and that worked really well. So you can use email to actually acquire customers, but 80% of email and ethical use of emails in most cases is about retaining them. But you can use email to acquire, And then email for the most part is free unless you have to actually pay for the database. And in most cases, when you have to pay for someone's email, it's either illegal in some countries, or in Indonesia, it's probably legal, but it's unethical. Okay, so that's a decision you have to make. Finally, push notifications. So if you install an app, I'll give you a simple example. If you install WhatsApp, someone sends you a message, then you get a push notification. You can switch that off, but in most cases, you switch it on. So when you have an app, you can use push notifications to get more organic traffic to open your app. Okay, when it comes to paid, right, you're using channels which allow you to advertise and therefore pay per click in most instances. So there's a concept called PPC, or pay per click advertising. And in most cases for Google, you pay per click. In traditional marketing, when you have a budget, it's usually CPM, cost per mil. How much do you pay per 1,000 eyeballs or something, right? In online, you could definitely do CPM, but in most cases, people prefer to do pay per click. So you pay for every click that people make.
Razi, maybe can you share like a live example of a click on a Google Ads to show what it means to pay per click from an advertiser perspective?
Okay. Oh, that's terrible. What was the? Okay, cari dokter.
Beli sepatu, whatever. No, that's very organic. Yeah.
That's very organic. Well, what is it? Something that people buy?
Beli whatever. Beli sepatu.
Beli tiket ke Singapore. Okay, so I'm looking for a ticket to Singapore. This right here is an advertising. This is an ad. And I don't want to click it because I know that if I click it, ticket.com has to pay. And I don't want to be a bad person and make them click when I know that I'm not doing it. But if I click this, then ticket.com has to pay for that click, right? And they're hoping that when someone searches beli tiket ke Singapore, and then they see this, they click it, and then they eventually hopefully buy a ticket, right? This one, Nusa Trip, Skyscanner, Traveloka, it's free. So this is SEO, and this is SEM. Okay, so quick comparisons. Okay, back to the slides. So when we talk about paid, mostly it's about search engine marketing, the example I just showed you before. There's also display ads. Display ads, like if you open Kompas.com or you open a blog, sometimes they have like banners, ad banners. If you turn off your pop-up blockers or your ad blockers, you should be able to see display advertising. You have social media ads. The primary one is actually Facebook. And in the future, maybe some other social media channels will have like a paid component, but social media ads, mostly it's Facebook, which owns Instagram. And also if you want to advertise on Gmail or you also. And when you talk about Google, they also allow you to advertise using display on their network, which also includes video on YouTube. Okay, and the final one is retargeting ads. It's quite simple. If you've ever visited a website and you open your social media or you open a website and an ad follows you everywhere, that's retargeting. Okay, that's when they use cookies, they use your data, and then they create ads specifically for people who have done a certain action. And one of those actions is visiting a website, buying something, or Googling something. And more creepy in recent times, your phone might actually record your voice, and if you say certain words, your Facebook app or whatever, your Google will actually kind of show you ads related to what you're talking about. And that's actually, I think, true. And I've seen multiple cases of it. It's very creepy, but that's basically retargeting. Now, before we go on, I wanted to kind of ask this question. And I want you guys to answer it on the Slack. Actually, no, answer it on the Zoom chat. Where do you think influencer marketing should go, organic or paid? Influencer marketing is really famous people promoting you on their posts. Okay, so give me your answers and then we'll check them out and then we'll give you what we think at the end of it.
Oh wow, it's a hot topic, huh?
Yeah, straight up. Okay, so this is the
poll. Wow. Okay, we'll make a poll.
We'll answer it at the end. Let's while you answer that, let's move on to the next topic, and this is the.
Can I take a couple of questions while you breathe a little bit?
Sure.
And you have a cup of water. Let me take a few questions.
Let me stop sharing.
Yeah, okay. Let me share then from my side. Okay, so we were at the promo. Let's restart from the promo. What's the difference between search engine optimization and search engine marketing, SEM, in terms of customer behavior and demographic? That is a great question. And the answer is there isn't much difference. Meaning that basically it's as we will see in actually in a couple of next slide, everything which has to do with search is intent based, meaning that you rank or you show an ads when you are showing an intent, which is you're searching for a specific keyword. So the type of people that basically search for whatever keyword is and the type of traffic that a website is getting is very similar if it's paid SEM or if it's organic SEO. So not much difference between the two. Then we'll skip skip that question. Doing endorsement to influencer is part of digital marketing. Maybe if you can mute. Okay. Let me answer that question. Yes, endorsement to influencer is part of digital marketing. Doing an endorsement to controversial influencer. I mean, there's two things you have to consider. So the first one is what is the performance in the short term, right? So what is the cost of bringing sign up, leads, or even sales coming out of your investment in that influencer? The other thing is the long-term impact and effect it has on your brand, right? So this is something that you have to consider carefully when deciding to getting the endorsement for a controversial influencer. So there is no right or wrong answer. It's up to you. How do you attract investors? When you mean investor, I mean customers. So foreign customers. I will show you actually a live example in a couple of slides on how you can do that with directly with the advertising on Facebook. And that's one of the beauty of online marketing, which is you can target geographically whoever you want. Fonda, CAC, we'll look at that in the next couple of slides, so I'm not going to answer now. Vicario, and actually hi to all the Gojek people that are logging in to today's session. Aside from retargeted ads, what else can be used both as acquisition and retention channels? In your opinion, content marketing can also be used for retention. I often buy something after reading a couple of articles from an online marketer. Yes, that's a great question and statement. I fully agree with what you're saying. Content marketing can work both in terms of acquisition, but also in terms of retention. That's another example. An indicator for retention cost. So typically we're not gonna go in depth to that question, Julian, this week, but just to give you some heads up, retention, typically you measure it in terms of churn. When you have a product whose billing is recurrent, you basically can calculate on average how many people still buy your product, your software month after month, and that's the definition of churn. So it's not about customer retention cost. So you want to have the lowest possible amount of churn. So you want to have all the people that start subscribing to whatever product or service you're selling to keep on buying basically forever, right? So you want to have ideally 100%, a 0% churn or 100% retention. The fact that you can get good results, obviously, there's not a short answer to that. So this is all about digital marketing. Where my brand sits right now, and then start executing registration based on that. Is still relevant? Not gonna answer this question. On the Facebook, Michelle, on your question, this is a very good question. Again, we're gonna look at it during the week, but very short answer is yes. Organic reach when it comes to social media, and especially when it comes to Facebook, is dead by now. It's almost zero. So if you want to have reach and results on a platform like Facebook, you better start investing money, which guess what? It's the beauty behind Facebook business model and how they're able to grow their revenue so much. Why is pay per conversion not developed as much as cost per click, pay per click? Well, the reason is, what I can tell you, this is a very good question. The reason from a ads platform perspective, right? They'd rather get the money from the advertiser once someone click right on the ads, rather than when someone convert, because the conversion is not something that, for example, Facebook or Google control, because a big part of
exactly
of why someone convert on your website is because of your brand, because of your app or your website. So Facebook, why would Facebook and Google take the risk of not getting enough money just because your site or your app is not optimized, right? So that explains why they are, you pay per click or per impression and not per conversion. I think that's it for now. Razi.
Yeah, that's a really good question, Ziad, and I think it's because they don't control the data, and it's really difficult to confirm it. So, as Matteo said, so let me try to share my screen. Back to this. Okay, so we're at the final kind of stage, but this is probably the most important for tonight that you grab, that you understand. So please, after all of that, this is the part where we're going to test you in the assignment. So drink your coffee. Let's try to get through this, and we'll try to answer questions as we go as well. Okay, so a lot of you are asking, how do I create an online marketing strategy? Or in simple terms, what channels should I use for my business, my product, or my service? There are three main factors that you should consider, okay? The first one is what we call scalability. The second is targeting, and there's two types of targeting. There's behavior targeting, and there's demographic targeting. Okay, keep that in mind. We'll go through it in more detail. The third one is customer acquisition cost. Okay, I think Fonda, you asked something about CAC, and so we're going to go through it. Please make sure you understand these three concepts. The assignment will be based on it. Okay, so let's move on to scalability. And when we talk about scalability, it simply means how big of an audience does an online marketing channel have, okay? So if you're advertising on Google and Facebook, they're one of the biggest channels. You know, Facebook has billions of users, and Google also has, like, I think, billions of users. So every day searching for stuff. And so they're the biggest channel because they reach the biggest audience, and that's what scalability means.
Can I just share, Razi, can I just share my screen just 1 second? I want to share more about the size, how dominant Google and Facebook are in the ads world, right?
Sure thing.
Yep. So let me share with you. There you go. So what I want to share with you was a few of those graphs, which actually I would also, I'll later post also on the chat. So I'm beyond this beautiful graph that shows how, you know, global internet ad spending as expected, TV for the first time 2018. So there you go. So this is the list of the top 30 global ad revenue companies. Well, 2016, so, but it didn't change as much in the last few years. So Alphabet, which is the holding company of Google and Facebook, right? and then all the others. So basically, you know, Google and Facebook themselves, and actually Facebook especially grew massively. So actually, it's closer to Google in terms of total revenue. They basically they dominate the global ad revenue, and it's very similar. The pattern and the concentration of ad spend on Google and Facebook is very similar also in Indonesia. So basically, I think around 80% or something along those lines is spent on either Google and Facebook. So that gives you an idea of how dominant in terms of audience, in terms of size, both Google ads and Facebook ads and their audience are. That's what I wanted to share.
Yeah, and I think the main important point about scalability is that when you invest so much in being able to reach your customers in one platform, in one channel, it's cheaper to be able to continue your strategy that's successful rather than trying to be dominant in another channel. So if you're kind of approaching your customers in a channel that is huge, you can simply scale your campaign to reach more people. Whereas if you're using a small channel, there's a max, you'll reach the max that you can kind of do, and then you're going to have to invest in another channel. And moving from channel to channel is not cheap. You know, it takes a lot of effort. So there takes a lot of learnings. And so to go back to the question about TikTok, it really comes down to scalability. You know, like, I mean, it's growing, but is it worthwhile for you to invest right now because you don't know how big it's going to be? Maybe it's just a fad. These questions you need to ask. I'm not saying this is facts. These are just questions you need to ask yourself when you're approaching a new channel, is to kind of look at how much you can scale your campaigns in that channel. Yeah. So that comes down to how many people are using it, are interacting in it, and that you can reach in it. Okay, so number one, scalability.
At the same time, Razi, sorry, can I just finish on
sure.
that?
Yeah, go ahead.
To TikTok, actually. So another thing, very important concept you should keep in mind is, so once the platform already, the ad platform already reach maturity, meaning that everyone knows about the opportunity to invest on Facebook and Google, it becomes very relatively expensive, right? Whereas if you're able to basically spot a pattern in terms of platform that is rapidly growing, and it can be the case of TikTok, for example, where you don't have as many advertisers, right, that are using the ad platform because it's new, then you have an opportunity basically to really advertise for very, very, very cheap. And that's what happened. The same happened in Google back in the day. So probably 15 years ago, when Google Ads, basically the whole advertising platform was still relatively unknown, but Google was already used by millions of people. The cost per click from Google was super, 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 super low. And then it kept on increasing year after year after year because you get more and more competition. The same thing for Facebook. So back in the days, I would say 10 years ago, no, probably even less, like 8 years ago, actually, you know, when we started, both me and Razi, that's where also we met each other's at Zalora 8 years ago. The company was investing so much in Facebook advertising because in the region, in Southeast Asia and in Indonesia specifically, it was still nascent, right? There weren't many brands, many advertisers that were investing in it, and as a result of that, the traffic, the very targeted traffic you could get from Facebook was very, very cheap. Whereas nowadays, everyone knows about Facebook ads, right? So if you're not a very sophisticated, great marketer, the traffic you get from Facebook could be very, very expensive. So long story short, TikTok, for example, test it out. If it's something that works for your business, with the trend, with the growth trend that it has, it could well be something that can really give you a lot of scalability. And up until you have competition, it could be a very, very cheap, unproven but yet cheap platform. So try as many platforms that you think could grow massively over the years, and they're not so many, right? So those are basically the TikTok, the Snapchat of the world.
Yeah, so I mean, that was something that we're going to discuss in number 3 is customer acquisition cost. And that's a very good point. I would like to point out an example here. If you're going to use organic social media, right? So you're not going to spend any money and you're just using organic social media. You can reach a lot more people now with one post on LinkedIn than on Facebook if you were to start out, right? If you're starting out, it's easier to reach more people on LinkedIn because LinkedIn is not as developed as Facebook, right? So that's something to consider when you're delving into new channels. Okay, so that's scalability. And if you have questions about scalability, please post them. We're going to answer them afterwards. But we'll move on to the next point, which is targeting. So this is the second factor that you need to kind of consider when you're picking your channels and you're prioritizing them. Okay, so the more targeted your audience, the more effective your campaign message will be. This is a fact. So you know, if we're talking about mass communication, a lot of people are probably going to ignore your message. But if it's targeted to a specific group of people in a very specific way, using jargon that they understand, then it's going to be a lot more effective because it's more personal, it's more connected, and people trust and connect better if it's more specific to them. For instance, if you're targeting only male, uh, who speak, you know, a dialect that a specific dialect, that's going to be very effective. Like if you're speaking Javanese in Indonesia, for instance, which is like not everybody knows it, but a lot of people know it. But if you use Javanese and you communicate in a way like a local, people are going to react to that more than if you use just Indonesian or English, right? So being more targeted helps. And when there's two types of targeting. There's behavior targeting, and then there's demographic targeting. And here, you know, Mateo is going to share a few examples, but it's basically these two different types of targeting. Some channels have both. Some channels are behavior only. Some channels are demographic. So the first one is behavior, and it's really intent based. So what is the intention of the customers? What are the actions that they took, right? And this is a type of pull marketing. And a really good example of that is Google search. Okay, if you're using Google search or you're trying to, you know, buy ads on Google, or you're trying to, you know, reach the top of search results, it's pull marketing. You're pulling people when they arrive, you know, and they arrive because they have a certain intention, and that's behavior driven. Okay, so if someone like I did before, cari dokter, I was looking for a doctor on Google, or I'm looking for a shoe on Google, I have an intent to look for shoes or to look for a ticket to Singapore, or I'm looking for a doctor or whatever the case may be. I have an intent, and your marketing is targeting people that have an intent. That's what behavior is, okay? Again, if you have questions about that, please post it, but it's pretty straightforward. It's basically when people arrive somewhere after a certain action that shows they're intending to do something, and you want your marketing to appear to those specific people based on their intent. Okay, the second one is demographic. It's based on identity and interests and other things such as that. So it's not necessarily what you intend, it's really about who you are and what are your interests. So this is push marketing. And the reason for what I mean by push marketing here is that people aren't intending to buy something and you're targeting them. Okay, so you're targeting people who are young, professional, make a lot of money, and you're trying to get them to buy a vacation, for instance, or buy a ticket to fly overseas. They might not necessarily be looking for a ticket, but you're identifying them. You're looking at their interests. If they're interested in traveling blogs or they're interested in traveling content, then it's a good bet that if you're selling like a travel package or a hotel, or you're selling tickets, if you're targeting people who inherently through their use of the internet or the social media, that they're liking a certain thing, you can target them. Another is like, let's say you're targeting people who love basketball. And so if they've shown on their social media accounts that they like basketball, you can target those people, even though maybe they're not in the market to buy what you're selling, right? They don't have an intent, but because of their demographics, you're targeting them. Okay, so this is pretty straightforward. And we'll give you a few examples later. But second point is targeting. Matteo, did you have anything else you wanted to add about targeting?
Yeah, I want to show a basically live example of the demographic
Sure.
type of targeting. Tell me when do you want me to show it?
Now is fine.
Okay.
Actually, I've put slides, but we might as well just show.
I mean, go ahead with the behavior one. I'll show an example for Facebook for the demographics.
Okay, so for the behavior one, as an example here, if you're searching for a Huawei P30 Harga online, like that's an example that you could look at, then they're basically approaching people who are searching for this, and they're selling the products that are relevant to what they were intending to buy. Pretty straightforward, right? So if you're looking to buy a phone, you'd probably compare prices, see which website sells it cheaper, etc., right? So this intent that you can capture by advertising on Google for specific keywords, very straightforward. And your advertisements show up when people are searching for it. Now, the pros of this is you're always relevant, okay? So relevancy is key. So they're searching for something and you're answering that call. And that's great. That's going to increase your conversion. What is the negative or the cons of this? It's slow. You're waiting for people to type in certain keywords on Google, like for instance, and that can be slow. You're waiting for them to show up and it might take time because it depends on how many people are searching for those keywords that day. Okay. The next one I wanted to show you is demographic. And I mentioned it before, most of it's on social media. You're targeting potential customers on the basis of their specific demographics. And for instance, I want to show you because I took this screenshot about a week ago, and recently I sold my car, and I opened a website called blimobilgue.co.id. I also opened a website called Carsum, Caroline. These are comparable services, and I was trying to sort of get some prices and compare them, right? And so because I did that, it appeared like for some reason they knew that I was buying a car. Now this is an example of how social media uses behavior targeting, okay? But on the left, if you see the left there, you have a software company, I believe, Magento, which is an e-commerce software, trying to sell me their product, right? And I'm pretty sure I haven't searched anything related to this. I assure you I have not searched anything like this. But what they're targeting is someone in my position. And it could be because I read tech blogs or I research about marketing, I work in technology, or I do things or certain things on my social media that identify me as a tech person or someone working in tech. And so they're targeting me based on that. Okay. So Matteo, did you want to add some more examples?
Yeah, I first want to add as a bonus point for whoever participated today. You can, as you can see here, you can add Razi on Facebook at the end of the, the lecture. That's the first thing that I want to say. The second is if I can share my screen, I'll share how.
Sure.
A quick example of the type of demographic targeting that you can do on Facebook. There we go. And actually after that, I will take probably, there's two interesting questions on specifically on that have been asked on Slack. So here's an example. This is the Facebook ads interface and platform. And for the ones of you that have never seen it, the first time you look at it, you get almost mesmerized. At least that was my impact. So what I wanted to show you here is the level of granularity of targeting that you can get that you can have with a platform like Facebook. So I selected, first of all, location Indonesia, and what you see here on the right side, right, audience size, is basically the potential reach on the basis of that geographical targeting, right? So 130 million, which match with with what Razi was mentioning at the beginning of the lecture, which is internet penetration, which in Indonesia pretty much correspond to Facebook / Instagram and WhatsApp, which are all under Facebook penetration, is like 50%, right? So 130 million people you could reach, right? And theoretically, you could reach, depending on the budget and the targeting, between 15 and 40 million people every day, right? So the first thing that I wanted to show you here is, you can decide to have for example, people only targeting people, for example, only in Yogyakarta, right? For whatever reason, you have an offline business that is only there. Obviously, you don't want, doesn't make any sense to advertise everywhere in Indonesia. So you want to target only people that live here, right? Or are just transiting there. And as you can see here, this is immediately reflected on your, on your reach, right? And then you can have, bigger radius, 50 kilometers from the center. You can be super, current city only, and in some cases you can go even more granular, right? So this is just an example of geographical. Let's just re-put back Indonesia. We'll show you the rest. Okay. The second fundamental demographic targeting you can do on Facebook is the age, right? So by default, 18 to 65. Let's assume you have a product or service that has a target audience of 18 to 25, right? So only people that have that age will be targeted, right? So immediately, as you can see, the potential reach in this case decreased by a factor of 3 because there are much less people that have that age. Gender, that's other basic, basic targeting. And up until here, this is pretty basic, meaning that most ad platform allow you to target by age, by geographical location, and by gender. When things get magical, and that's what explains the success of Facebook as a business, right, is the fact that you can have a much more detailed targeting, right? So for example, if you guys want to suggest any type of interest you could think of on Zoom directly, I can then put it here. So feel free to put any interest on the Zoom chat, so I can then put it here. Let me start with if no specific suggestion. Let me see. For example, cars, right? I'm interested in Proton cars. Oh wait, let me see if someone. Bubble tea.
Michelle, bubble tea. Yeah, bubble tea.
That's a very nice one. Bubble tea. Up. Ouch. Sorry. There you go. So bubble tea, you have 5 million people, and if you over on the information, it tells you what is the methodology adopted, right? So basically 5 million people that could, between that age, let's put, for example, women, actually, or let's put men. Yeah, so 3 million women between 18 and 25 that has as an interest, bubble tea, and maybe you want them to have.
I'm actually curious how many guys like bubble tea.
2.2.
Oh, that's a lot. Wow. Okay.
And then
it's bad for you, by the way.
So language, let's see, that speak. Well, let's say English, right? Then it gets to 900,000, right? And basically you can add as many interests or even behavior as possible, right? Digital activities. There's basically, you can really have, there's thousands and millions actually of possible permutation and combination of targeting you can do. The way Facebook does it, some of this you explicitly basically tell Facebook about it, meaning that when you basically like something, Facebook is able through that to to infer, they know that right away that you like that specific topic or brand or interest, and they can also infer it also from how you're connected with people, other friends, what your friends like. I mean, there are many ways how Facebook, which by the way is not just Facebook, it's also WhatsApp and it's also Instagram, basically crunch all that data and can then on the base of that come up with this incredible targeting which is basically the most important reason why the Facebook ads platform is just so powerful, because you can go as granular as you want. And the beauty of that is that you can test it out. You should test it out. You should test every single interest and every single targeting to see what is it that works best for you. And you don't need to spend million for that. You can start by spending just a few dollars. But I'll stop here because I don't want to cannibalize the topic of tomorrow. So if you have, let me see if there's any questions specifically on that. Not many of my friends are actively using Facebook. It's still a relevant channel to market something. Look, so by default, when you see here on placement, right? So by default, Facebook, that as I mentioned, include not just Facebook, but also basically Instagram and also the Messenger, right? So by default, you target all those platforms at the same time. And actually, around the world, but especially in Indonesia, Instagram ads are very, very powerful. So you can choose to opt in or opt out. But the short answer is through Facebook ads, and the ads platform is the same. You can manage all your ads investment also on Instagram. Should I take Razi? Should I take the different question now? Should we take it on demographic and behavior before we move to the next topic?
Yeah, sure. Okay.
Okay. Does Google AdWords can use behavior targeting? And the answer is yes. How do we know someone's interest for demographic targeting? They make assumption based on the profile. Yes. So as I said, something is explicit, and something it's just infer. I mean, they have hundreds among the smartest data scientists working for Facebook that days in and days out just think about how to to crunch and build models to guess, to infer from all the data that they have what is the profile of each person. Which is better, broad or niche audience in Facebook ads targeting? Michelle, the fact that estimated daily results, yes, estimated daily results are just an assumption. So this is not exactly what you sign up for if you start advertising. So it's just the rule of thumb is, I mean, the rule is always some data and some estimates is always better than no data, no estimates. So that's why Google give you those estimates. Broader niche audience, it's always better to start to try to be targeted, right, in your audience, so rather than just going super broad. At the same time, if you go too niche, you could end up spending basically more than you should. So there's no right and wrong answer. It depends, and you should test it out. But as a rule of thumb, it's better to be niche than broad. Do you need scalability, audience size? Yes. Obviously, if an ad platform that is built on top of...
Hey, Matteo, you might want to share your Slack screen instead of your browser screen.
Can I ask to mute? Actually, this is some echo. Let me just share my screen. Can you share? There you go. Sorry for that, guys. Do you mean scalability is audience size? Yes. So, I mean, think about it, right? So if you have a platform that is just used by a few hundreds users, right? And you offer a ad platform, and you build an ad platform on top of that, there's no way that an advertiser can reach many people, because this is limited by the number of users you have, which is why Google and Facebook are the biggest ad platform, because basically every single internet user use both Google and Facebook. Lawrence, still with Facebook in Indonesia, could we still use age and interest as a target on Facebook? Yes. Perhaps some of you are faking their age and interest. Another example is the relationship, since now hardly see people updating their Facebook status anymore. In theory, you're right, Lawrence. In practice, Facebook has just so many data points that they don't need anymore you to explicitly say that you are in a relationship or that you have some interest. They are able to infer it, right? Which is, on one hand, the beauty of it, and on the other is the scary part, right? Especially when it comes to politics, as you probably know, all the scandals that happen, especially in the Western world, when it comes to how much politicians can influence their voters by advertising on Facebook. Hello, I wonder, is anyone has a business with a niche market regarding targeting, how to target the undetectable? I work in a contemporary art gallery. Well, the answer to this data is, if you are using Google Ads, which is intent-based, it is hard to target those people, because if people are not searching specifically for a keyword, then by definition you cannot target them. But one of the best thing about Facebook is that you don't need people basically to specifically do anything in order for you to target them, right? And you would be surprised on how many different interests that you haven't thought about could work very, very well for even a very niche business. So there's no way to know it beforehand. So you could have some assumptions and you can come up with some hypotheses, but the best way to do it is to just test it out. You have to know how to use the Facebook ads platform in order to do that in a structured and methodical way. But then you would be surprised to know and to see what are the type of interest that turns out to be very, very well converting for your niche business. So that would be the answer to that. Good. I'll stop sharing, and Razi, I'll leave it up to you for the final part of today's lecture.
Sure. Before we move on, is there anybody in Zoom who wants to ask directly a question relating to targeting? You can unmute your mic and ask.
Lawrence, please go ahead. Ready.
No. I already asked in the Slack. Thank you.
Okay. If anybody wants to ask, just unmute and ask away during the presentation. So moving on to the final slide, or the final section, we talked about scalability, we talked about targeting, and now we're going to talk about customer acquisition costs. Okay, and I think this would be something where Matteo can add value as well. And so I'm just going to go through the points, and maybe this is the part where I think a lot of you might have a lot of questions. So make sure to ask them before we move on to the final slides and the assignment. Okay, so customer acquisition cost is exactly what it means. It's the cost that a company pays or you pay to get one new customer. Okay, and so we talked about how much money you can make from a customer, right, on average. And what that is customer lifetime value. And what you need to make sure is that the customer acquisition cost is less than the margin you make for every customer you acquire. Okay, that's the general rule. So acquired here can be interpreted as signing up to your newsletter, created an account for a free trial, installed an app, and bought a service or a product, etc. Okay, so this is sort of how you calculate customer acquisition cost. Okay, I don't have to go through it in detail, but you can kind of have a look. And if you guys have any question, please feel free to ask away. Why do we focus on customer acquisition costs? Because it is a very, very important metric to track in digital marketing. One of the key differences of digital marketing compared to traditional offline marketing is that you can track your return on investment. And customer acquisition cost is a key metric to measure your return on investment. Now, not every marketing campaign online requires you to get your money back. There are certain businesses that are focusing on growth first and then making money later. There are certain businesses that require a good, healthy margin. So it really depends, but all of them need to know what the customer acquisition cost is. So to repeat again, it's the amount you pay to acquire one new customer, okay? And basically what you do is you need to calculate the customer acquisition costs for each channel that you are using. And by nature, some channels have higher customer acquisition costs than others. And there's sometimes good reasons to invest in a channel that has a very high customer acquisition costs. And we'll be talking about that in more detail tomorrow. But for today, all you need to know is that when you are deciding the channels that you're using, you need to know what, or you need to calculate and you need to predict and you need to have a kind of idea of what the customer acquisition costs are. Obviously, once you have more data, you get a specific, you can kind of, kind of plan it out and project what your customer acquisition costs are. But even before you start using it, you can start looking at all the different channels that are available, and you can start kind of strategically knowing which ones have higher customer acquisition costs and which ones have lower customer acquisition costs. Okay, so that's basically it. Before we go to the, I guess, assignment, are there any questions regarding scalability, targeting, both demographic and behavior, and also customer acquisition costs?
There's quite a few questions on Slack actually regarding customer acquisition costs.
Okay.
While you share your screen, Razi, I just wanted to add one fundamental concept, which is the underlying reason why you're able to calculate such customer acquisition costs is because all online channels allow you to attribute your conversion to the money you spent in that channel, right? So you are able to track that conversion and then to attribute it back, right? So this is the fundamental thing you need to understand, meaning that on a platform, let's take again Facebook, through the technology that Facebook has developed, you are able to track directly on the Facebook ads interface that I showed you before, how much you spent, let's say $100, and how many conversion happens on your website, let's say 10 conversions. So then you can divide one by the other and you can have your customer acquisition costs. So this is key for you to understand. You can do that and you can calculate the cost of acquiring a customer only if you're able to track and to attribute back the money you spent and the customers you acquired as a direct result, as a direct consequence of the money you spent on that specific channel. So this is very important to understand the whole logic behind the customer acquisition cost.
Okay. So I've shared my screen. Mateo, did you want to go through the questions? Because you're on a roll.
I can go through the customer acquisition cost if you want, and then we can you can take any others on the previous concepts if you want.
Sure.
So is guest checkout consider customer acquisition cost? No, it's not, because basically a guest. Oh wait, sorry. That's actually a pretty good. That's a very good question actually. I thought add to basket. Oh, that's why you're asking me to go ahead with the question. No, this is a pretty good question. Is guest checkout? Yes. Well, if that's a tricky question.
Can I try to answer that a little bit? I think to answer that question about guest checkout, it depends. Like if you've captured their data, and because or you're able to retarget them at some point in the future and interact with them in the future, then you can consider it an acquisition in a way. But because, for instance, like not all acquisition means someone bought your product, right? So the answer maybe it really depends on how you want to measure based on your objectives, but also at the same time, it really depends on if you have their data or not. And if you have their data, that means you've acquired something that you can use to interact with the customer in the future. And therefore, I would consider guest checkout, if you do collect their data at guest checkout, it is somewhat of an acquisition.
To the second question, to Vicario question, it's interesting. CAC touches multiple points on the funnel. Does that mean that if a marketer says that the CAC is small, we need to deep dive in it? Look, what I can say, what I can answer to that question is there's a lot of noise and there's a lot of wrong definition of CAC. Also among marketeers, so it's always worth understanding exactly what someone means when he says that the CAC is small, right? Because there are many different variations of CAC. So that's one way to answer that. Is it only for newsletter sign up or actually someone buys the product? So typically an acquisition of a customer is then when there's the first transaction, be it a product, be it a service, right? In the case of sign up to newsletter, I would say 95% of the cases, this is typically defined as a lead, and this is something that can then lead to a acquisition of a customer, but it's not defined as a customer yet. That's for most cases. If you don't get a customer from Facebook ads, there's obviously many ways of why this is happening. Jiska, behavior intent based. Do you mean people who Google to search for products like me Googling? Yes. What means intent based means that you have to proactively do something. So in the case of Google, is search for something in order to be targeted by that ad. Yes. NGO. I would like to create NGO. Do you still have managed? Yes. I mean NGO. I mean there's no distinction of businesses to do digital marketing, right? You can basically a huge use and popular use of digital marketing is in raising, for example, funds for either for NGO, or in the case of politics, that's very current, right? In the US, there's the Democrat primaries, and to elect the Democrats candidate for next year election, and they are spending millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars on Facebook ads to basically both to influence the voters, but also to raise additional money from voters. So absolutely yes. CAC main KPI for digital marketing. Obviously there isn't a single, there isn't a 100% consensus. If you ask me, yes, I do think if there's one metric that you should know inside out and you should fully understand is CAC. And the reason is because if you fully understand CAC, it means that you do understand many of the fundamental concepts of digital marketing. So CAC is probably the single most important metric to know. The second one, based on my experience, is the so-called customer lifetime value, which is often the acronym is often LTV. That's the second, most important metric. Razi, you want to take the question coming?
There's a question at the top there that I think wasn't addressed. Could we still use? I think it was a question about Facebook. Not many of my friends are actively using Facebook. Is it a relevant channel to market something? Yes, depends. Did you?
Yeah, so the fact that you can manage with the Facebook ads interface and platform, you can also advertise on Instagram, right? And
yes, not just that, but also some. I think it really depends. You're looking at your friends, which is a very segmented section of the market. If you're reaching maybe people in more second-tier cities, for instance, most of them probably started on Facebook. So I think it's a situation where it depends on the market, and I think generally speaking, don't quote me on this, but I think generally speaking, Instagram is for middle upper class in Indonesia. And when we talk about Facebook, it's middle lower class are still using Facebook. Old people are still using Facebook. Maybe, younger people are using Instagram and moving to places like TikTok, for instance. So it really depends on the target. So if you're targeting a certain demographic, Facebook actually might be the right channel for you.
Razi, can I take Ulul's question? I love it. Can I?
Yeah, sure.
So Ulul, no, I love the question because this is something which is very, very, which is very relatable to what we're doing here at RevoU, right? So I can tell you the way we look at it. So how to specifically define CAC for a school type of business model? Yeah. so that we can accurately calculate the customer acquisition cost. Is a call from potential parent counted, or must be the final admission enrollment? And you anticipated, you may answer it in the context of revenue admissions. Yes, so I can tell you the way we do it is specifically what you mentioned. So for us, the final customer acquisition cost is the enrollment itself, right? But that doesn't mean that that's the only metrics that we are tracking, right? So we are tracking the cost of reaching each stage of our so-called funnel, right? Which start from the leads. So when someone apply or sign up, that's a cost. Then a percentage of those, go ahead in the admission process. A percentage of those, get admitted, and so there's a cost per admitted student, for example. And then the final, the final cost, which is what we define as customer acquisition cost, is the cost of enrolled students. So that's the answer. And actually, you can have a lot of fun. I mean, a lot of fun. It's very, it's very.
Depends on your definition of fun. Not everybody actually thinks that's fun.
Yeah, well, maybe it's not fun, but the suggestion is calculate the cost per whatever you want to define it of the different steps of the purchase funnel. So not only the last one, but also before then, especially if there's a delayed effect, as in your case, between when someone shows interest and they say sign up to when the student is enrolled. So you want to kind of have visibility of that black box by having those intermediary metrics. Ratio between LTV to CAC. This goes a bit beyond today's class. What I can say is that it needs to be by profitability definition higher than 1, because if it costs you more money than what you can generate out of a customer, it means that your business will never be profitable, right? We're running out of time, guys. So Razi, if you agree, I would then switch to the assignment to introduce and explain and brief people about the assignment for tomorrow.
Yes, I agree. And Rusty will answer your questions after we finish. We still have time till 9:30 for those of you who want to stay and ask questions. But we got to move to the assignments for the people that want to go at 9. We're kind of behind schedule, but really quickly. So this is the first assignment, and I want to kind of show you what it is. You can check the Git book if you want to kind of go through it in detail. You can ask questions with the teaching assistants, and also through Slack, through our WhatsApp chat, to ask questions if you don't really understand what it is. So first of all, you need to make sure you understand the concepts of scalability, targeting, and CAC, right? Customer acquisition costs, because they're really the fundamentals of how you're going to approach this assignment. So I want you to imagine you're about to make a recommendation to a client or your manager or your boss or whatever on the channels they should be using for a campaign. And you have decided, right, based on your experience, you've decided to use 5 channels: email marketing, SEO, social media organic, meaning not paid, and social media paid.
As you mind sharing the screen? Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, sorry. Is it not shared?
Well, it went out for some reason.
Oh, it went out, yeah. Hold up. Okay, so here's the assignment. Imagine for a second you're about to make a recommendation to a client or your boss about the channels, the online marketing channels they should be using for a campaign. And you've decided to recommend email marketing, SEO, social media organic, social media paid, and SEM, okay? So you could research about all those 5 channels. And we want you to create a simple report, right, that looks at all these 5 channels and rates for each of them on scalability and cost per acquisition. Are they high, medium, or low? And I want you to identify the targeting types that are available on each channel. Is it behavior? Is it behavior and demographic, or is it just demographic for each of the channels? And this is very important. What we want to test you on is the reasoning behind your answers, okay? I'm going to quickly show you a sample of how you answer it, but remember that the deadline is tomorrow, Tuesday, 3rd of March at 6 p.m., which is before our lecture tomorrow, okay? The way that you answer it is we need you to create and publish your work in a Google Doc file in the Google Drive folder that we've shared to your email. I'm going to show you in a second what that means. And the file name you should follow is in the following format, okay? W0D1, which is week 0, day 1, dash your first name, dash your last name, .doc, okay? So this is going to help us in our assessment of your file, okay? So again, don't hesitate to ask your teaching assistant or any Revo you staff on Slack, especially in the assignments channel, which we'll create, if any of the above is unclear. Okay, I want to quickly show you. So this is the email that you should have gotten, right? Invitation to collaborate with your name on it. So if you open that, and here you could just right click, Google Doc, right? Blank document. Create and share. And in here, what we want you to do simply is, like, for instance, you're creating SEO, right? And then for each of them, scalability, you have you have targeting, and you have TAC. Sorry, I misspelled targeting. Okay, so for scalability, it could be high, could be mid, right? It could be low, up to you. Targeting, it could be behavior, right? It could be behavior and demographic, or it's just demographic. Up to you, right? Cost per acquisition, high, mid, or low, right? Now, for each of these, what I want you to do is explain why did you choose your answers, right? Because blah, 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 right? For each of these, you need to explain why. And you create a report like this, and imagine you creating the report for your clients or your boss. So we'll give extra points for how you structure it and flair, right? How it looks, how professional it looks. But basically the core of what we're trying to identify is whether or not you understood tonight's concepts and whether or not you can decide for each of those channels, those 5 channels, right? For each of these channels, right here, for each of these channels, what are the scalability, customer acquisition costs, and targeting types for each of them, so that you can actually explain to a client, explain to your boss why you decide to use those channels, okay? Once you do this, make sure that you file and you save it. Actually, sorry, right here. So it's W0D1, Razi, there, and then you save it. And that's your file. And once you do that, it should be okay because we've shared it with everybody that should be able to see it. Okay, so you don't need to share it. So that's how you answer it, and that's how you save it. So check your email for an email to invitation to collaborate. Open the folder, create a new file, and then try to create your document. Okay, any questions? Please ask after the class. Matteo, is there anything else you want to add?
Yes, so on the assignment part, if you can just go back to the Canva orientation. So assignments are for us basically one of the most important thing we ask all of our students that go through our 10 to 12 week program to work on a daily basis. And the reason why it's so important is because basically you realize A, if you have understood what what the lecture was about, and B, by just putting the in practice the learnings, that's a way for you to basically remember much better the previous day's lecture. So this is one of the most important things we do at RevoU. And we typically, and we will see tomorrow, we typically discuss about those assignments and provide feedback, and they are mandatory for for the students to go through our program. Now for orientation week, we really would like as many people as possible to submit their assignment, right? Because I mean, take advantage of that, because as I said, this is a way for you to really put in practice and understand if you've learned the concept, and to further ask questions to our, to our teaching assistant, or even to ourselves tomorrow. So please work on that. And what else? I think for the assignment, that's basically what I wanted to add. We're gonna have one today, one tomorrow, one on Wednesday, and then a bigger assignment, which we call our weekly sprint, that will brief you on Thursday, and that will be submitted on on Saturday. I think that's it for the assignments part. What I wanted to conclude, also to share with you, is first thing, we have shared on Zoom and also on Slack a feedback form, which takes 2 minutes for you to, or not even 30 seconds for you to fill out. This is key for to help us basically improve already for tomorrow, right? So please take those 30 seconds to fill it out. That's the first thing. The second thing is that we have created a assignments channel on Slack. So that's where we will post the brief of the assignment, the same that Razi just mentioned, where we will ask you to basically to comment once done on the assignment. That's the second thing. And the third thing, I think that's about. Yeah, I think that's about it. We will record. I mean, we are recording the session. We will share with you once the the recording is fine-tuned, so you can basically rewatch anything that you haven't understood, or if you just had so much fun, you can rewatch it again and again, depending on your definition of fun.
Or if you hate yourself and you want to punish yourself, you can go watch it again. Okay, so that's been very intensive, and we don't want to keep any of you that wants to go home, rest, or whatever. We will be here until 9:30 for anyone that wants to ask more questions. If it's regarding the assignment, please ask over WhatsApp or Slack in the appropriate channel. But tonight, really, for the remaining questions, we'll be trying to answer. So if you guys want to check out, if you guys want to finish the night, feel free to go. We're going to keep opening the channel for the next 10-15 minutes, or even longer, depending if there's a lot of really good questions. So thank you very much for your time tonight. We went over the time limit, but I think it's, as a first class, it's been very intensive. And thank you for staying with us all this time.
Thank you
Cheers.
so much.
All right, you're free to go, unless you have any questions.
Thank you, Razi.
Cheers. Thanks, Lawrence.
Thank you all. Good.
Cheers.
Good. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, so so Rusty, let me just share my screen to answer. Rusty, I hope you're still there. How do you utilize LinkedIn to generate leads, particularly for B2B marketing, right? I think this is a loaded question that can't be answered right now. But again, it comes back to what I was saying about TikTok, what I was saying about Facebook, what I was saying about Instagram. It really depends on your target audience, right? With LinkedIn, usually people use LinkedIn for professional reasons. So they're looking for work, they're looking to network, and they're looking to improve their career. It's always business related. So if your product or your service is related to business, related to people improving professionally, then you could definitely generate leads, particularly for B2B marketing. For instance, RevoU, we have started using LinkedIn, especially kind of organically. We haven't looked into LinkedIn ads because it's still very expensive. But if it makes sense at some point, we will. But we started posting a lot of content. And I think, Matteo, for instance, has a huge network of people who are C-level, who are managers, marketing people, and definitely they want to kind of, train their staff, their employees, and their team with marketing. We could definitely target it by him posting it, for instance. But we also have a LinkedIn page where we post a lot of content about success stories, about students, about what we do, and that will develop. But the key to doing leads in LinkedIn, I think, especially in the short term, is how good your content is. So it really depends on your content, and it comes down to who your target audience is, what they need. And I want to remind, I think a lot of us think that we should just start selling. I want to remind you that, I mean, a lot of the good salespeople don't necessarily sell directly until they've built trust, right? Until the people have gone to like them and trust them. So it's very important when you're posting on social media to understand that most people don't open their social media so that people can advertise to them, okay? A lot of people use social media for whatever purposes they want to use it for. So they want to use it to interact with other people, you know, they want to learn, they want to kind of gain value. So the idea is, what sort of value can you give your audience so that they will trust you and then they like you, so that when it comes time for you to sell, or when it comes time for them to buy, they'll gladly buy from you. Okay, we're going to discuss that in the weeks where we talk about content marketing. And we're going to talk about that a little bit about it tomorrow as well, when we go through all of the different channels in more detail. Okay, Lydia, so influencer marketing is paid or organic? It's actually both. It's mostly paid, because if you're paying someone to post something, then it's paid, right? But sometimes you have a friend who is famous and you can get them to post for free, then that's kind of like organic in a way, but mostly paid. So the right answer is it can be both, but in most cases it's paid. So hopefully that answers your curiosity. So congrats to those who answered both. Julian, I want to ask about the assignment. Okay. Can you ask it in the assignments channel right here? Okay, so it'll be answered directly there. With regards to the content of the lecture, anybody else have any questions? Feel free to unmute your mic and ask the question.
If someone has, sorry, if someone has a question that wasn't answered because we might have overlooked, please ask it now. You can also unmute yourself.
Yeah, we can have we can chat here now over Zoom. Some people have left because they want to go to sleep. They got to wake up tomorrow morning. But for those of you still here, if you have any questions, just unmute your mic and ask away. We'll answer them directly.
And actually still 50 people on. I'm impressed.
Hopefully you guys are at home. Actually, hold on. Let me stop sharing and let me share the Slack.
I can take Brian question. Whether reason is given in the scalability and CAC section on every channel or just on channel? Brian, not sure what you mean here. Mind elaborating a little bit more? Or Razi, if you understood the question from Brian. Or if you want to
okay, let me try to understand this. So where the reason is given in the scale. Yeah, so basically for each channel, there's 5 channels, right, Brian? For each channel, you're going to determine whether the scalability is high, mid, or low, whether the CAC is high, mid, or low. When you need to choose one, right? So, or, you know, for instance, scalability, you can say the scalability is high. And I want you to explain why you said it's high. And if you say the customer acquisition cost is low, I want you to explain why the customer acquisition cost is low. That's basically it. So it's a reason behind something, right? So for instance, you decided to take a shower this morning, right? So you said you're taking a shower. We just want to know why you decided to take a shower. That's it. So it's the reason why. So you definitely have to give an answer, and we just want to know how you think or how you made that decision. I hope that's clear. Shifa, I want to add, the client's type of business does not matter. Okay, I want you to ignore that part. It does not matter. What we're saying is that based on the client's type of business, which doesn't matter, you've decided to use those 5 channels. And you need to explain to your client why and in what situations do those channels work. So it's always based on those three things. It's based on scalability, right? It's based on customer acquisition costs, and it's based on the targeting. So ignore the client type. That was just to kind of put you in the frame of mind where you're actually presenting to someone in a professional way. But what we want you to do is to just explain if the channel has high scalability, mid scalability, or low scalability. And we want you to kind of decide whether in terms of customer acquisition costs, whether it's high, mid, or low. And then with regards to targeting, I want you to explain this channel has, you know, behavior targeting, or this channel has demographic targeting, or this channel has both types of demographics and behavior targeting. That's basically it. And I want you to explain why you think it has that. Okay. How to determine whether the CAC is low or high? I mean, it's so subjective depending on the size of the company. So this, again, just answer based on what you believe. And as long as you have a good reason, right, for believing that, and it's logical, it's an exercise. I mean, if we're talking real, you know, when we talk about customer acquisition cost, it really depends. Low or high is a subjective term. For a company that has high customer lifetime value, the customer acquisition cost is low, even if it's expensive, if you understand what I mean. I hope you're still there, Julian. So it's really subjective, right? But I want you to just have a good reason, right? We're not here to determine whether you're right or wrong. We're here just to test your logic. So Julian, do some reading about each one of them and try to find a reason behind choosing mid, high, or low for the customer acquisition costs. Okay. We just want for you to come up with a reason why you think it's low, high, or mid. Again, I want to reiterate that this is just to test your logic. This is to test whether or not here's a hint, whether or not you read the pre-reading material that we sent you, and also whether or not you can kind of do research. And finally, again, it's really about your logic. When it comes to marketing, sometimes there's no right or wrong answer. There's no, correct way of doing things. There's no, oh, you follow this and you'll be successful. It's really about experimentation. It's really about trying new things. And what's most important when you're experimenting, for instance, you're going to jump into TikTok, for instance, that's an experiment, right? So when you're experimenting, what's really important is the hypothesis that you make for each step that you take, and what is the decision-making process you have. And so logic is key. And what we're trying to do here is just trying to determine how you think and your logic behind the decisions that you make, not necessarily whether you're right or wrong. Because, you know, if we're going to go deep and detailed, then you're not, I mean, this is too early for that kind of assignment. This is really just about testing your logic and whether or not you learned what we were teaching earlier tonight. Okay, so cheers. Thanks, Julian, for acknowledging it.
I think people are waiting for you to collapse, Razi, on the desk.
No, I'm having fun. I'm having fun. And I'm having fun. It's a bit late, but I'm still having a lot of fun. I love this. Thank you for participating. Okay, so are there any more questions? We have one from Valen. How do we know if our customers is from IG ads, FB ads, or they contact us through WhatsApp? Again, it's about attribution. And when you talk about online marketing, Valen, and you'll learn this over the next few weeks if you're joining the program, I'm not sure. But over the next few weeks, especially I think in week 1 and 2, we're going to talk about analytics. And when we talk about analytics, there's attribution for each channel. And if you do your, like if you set up your pixels right, you set up your analytics account, we're going to be learning about Google Analytics, but there's so many other analytics. When you set it up right, you're going to be able to identify which channel all of your customers come from. So the answer is, if you set up everything right and you know how to use your analytics tool, you should be able to kind of know which channels it comes from. Okay, Vicario, aside from customer acquisition costs, what other metrics are usually measured for digital marketing? Yeah, I mean, we're going to talk about that in week 1 and week 2, especially week 1, I think, around analytics. Again, I think right now the reason why we're focusing on CAC is because it's usually one of the most important metrics. As Matteo mentioned earlier, if you know how to measure CAC and how, you know, how CAC works and how you calculate it, then it kind of helps you to be able to understand how most marketing metrics are being measured. But I think if you're, for instance, looking at raising awareness, it really depends on the channel, right? So in most cases, when you're talking about revenue, when you're talking about sales, when you're talking about customer data, you want to capture them through the install app, through, you know, signing up on your website or your app or whatever. But sometimes when when you talk about awareness, it could be reach, you know, like the reach. So for each channel, it's different. I think for social media specifically, it's about reach and engagement. Okay, so reach is how many people actually saw your content, and engagement is how many people engaged with your content. And I think engagement, not all engagement are equal. For instance, I think a comment means more than a like, and you know, a share is definitely, it means more than a comment, for instance. When you go to YouTube, I think some of the metrics is if you have a 10-minute video, there is an average number of minutes that people are watching, right? And the higher that is, the more engaged they are, for instance. So some of these metrics, in terms of number of views of your videos, for instance, on YouTube, how many times your video was viewed, how many people commented, liked, shared it, and I think most importantly, when you go into the kind of YouTube studio, is to see how long are people watching it. Like if it's a 10-minute video, if they're watching close to 10 minutes on average, then you have a very engaging piece of content. Okay, and I think a lot of it leads to paid at some point, because some of these social medias are businesses and they want you to pay money to reach your audiences, right? So if you're using Facebook and you have a really viral organic content, then it might be worth it for you to put money and to reach more people because you know that the content is effective. Ulil, it's been a great lecture. Thank you, Razi, for taking the lecture. Okay, cool. Well, hopefully see you tomorrow. Okay, guys, I think if there's no more questions and nobody else is,
let me just take Razi, let me take a couple of last ones.
Okay, cool.
I'll let you free. Don't want you to collapse.
Cheers.
Wait, let me share the screen. I'll take the last ones. The matrix of CAC. If we have two matrices such as bot, product, and I don't wait. So this has been no, sorry, this has been already covered. Let me just see whether there are questions here. No, okay, no more question. Yeah, false alarm. Guys, so thank you so much. As I mentioned, the recording will be available. We need a bit of time to, you know, to polish it, and we will upload it so you can basically watch it as many times as you want. I'll see you all tomorrow from 6:30 onwards, and from 7 we will stop taking questions, and from 7 p.m. the new lecture will start, and I'll be the instructor for most of the lecture tomorrow. Thanks again so much, and talk to you all tomorrow. Have a great evening all.
Bye all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.